If you asked someone 100 years ago what the greatest environmental challenge of the future would be, they probably would have imagined smokestacks blackening the sky, rivers contaminated by factories, or cities buried under piles of waste. And for much of the 20th century, they would have been right. The Industrial Revolution transformed our world. It brought incredible advances in medicine, transportation, manufacturing, and communication. It raised living standards in ways our ancestors could never have imagined. Welcome to the Renovation Secrets podcast. I'm Natalia Pierce, and today I want to talk about another revolution and the consequences nobody wants to know. The same factories that built prosperity polluted our air. The same automobiles that gave us freedom filled our cities with smog. The same chemicals that made modern life more convenient sometimes left us with environmental problems that took decades to recognize. History has taught us something important. Every technological revolution leaves a footprint. Sometimes we see it immediately. Sometimes it takes years before science catches up and helps us understand the hidden costs. Today, I want to talk about artificial intelligence and social media. Like the Industrial Revolution, this one feels almost invisible. There's no smoke pouring from towering chimneys, no assembly lines stretching for kilometers, no deafening sound of steel presses echoing across the city. Instead, AI feels almost magical. You ask a question, an answer appears in seconds, compiled from infinite resources. A doctor analyzes medical images faster than ever before. An architect can generate hundreds of design concepts in minutes. A student learns from a personalized tutor available 24 hours a day. The possibilities are truly extraordinary. And I genuinely believe artificial intelligence will become one of the most important tools humanity has ever created. In fact, I used AI to help organize this episode. I use AI almost every day in my business, and I think it's one of the most transformative technologies we'll see in our lifetime. But supporting technological progress doesn't mean we stop asking difficult questions. Every technological revolution has had unintended consequences. Factories gave us pollution, automobiles gave us smog, and plastics gave us convenient and an ocean full of waste. AI shouldn't be exempt from that same scrutiny, because history has also taught us something else. When we become fascinated by what technology can do, we sometimes forget to ask what it requires. And every convenience has a cost. Every innovation consumes resources. Every advancement changes the environment around us in ways we don't always recognize immediately. For decades, we've become very good at measuring technological performance. We measure processing speed, energy efficiency, internet bandwidth, storage capacity, computing power. Perhaps we've neglected a more important question. What is the cost to human performance? Not financial cost, biological cost. How does the infrastructure supporting our digital world influence our sleep, our stress levels, our ability to think clearly, our health, and our communities? Because if you've been listening to this podcast for any length of time, you already know the question that sits at the heart of Well-Built. Our environments shape us every single day, whether we notice them or not. We've spent this season exploring how lighting influences our circadian rhythms, how air quality affects cognition, how acoustics shape stress and concentration, and how thoughtful design can help people recover, flourish, and even reach greater potential. But what if the environments we're creating outside our homes are beginning to work against those very same goals? What if the next environmental challenge isn't one we can see, but one we can hear? There's another environmental stressor we've barely begun talking about, and that's noise. Not loud concerts, not construction sites, not the neighbor mowing their lawn on a Sunday morning. I'm talking about chronic environmental noise, the kind that quietly becomes part of the background until we stop noticing it's even there. The World Health Organization has spent decades studying this issue, and their conclusions are difficult to ignore. They state that environmental noise is not merely an annoyance, but a public health problem with sufficient evidence linking chronic noise exposure to not only cardiovascular disease, but cognitive impairment in children, major sleep disturbances, tinnitus, and reduced well-being. The report goes even further. It estimates that at least 1 million healthy life years are lost every year in Western Europe alone because of environmental noise, with sleep disturbance accounting for the largest burden, followed by chronic annoyance. Not deaths. These are healthy life years. So think about that for a moment. Just take a minute and breathe that in. We're not talking about rare diseases or catastrophic events. We're talking about millions of people sleeping just a little worse, feeling just a little more stressed, thinking just a little less clearly, day after day, year after year. That's exactly what Well Built has been exploring throughout its entire development and evolution. The environments around us don't have to make us sick to hold us back. They only have to be just disruptive enough that our biology is constantly working harder than it should. And once you begin looking at our world through that lens, you start asking different questions. So if chronic environmental noise is affecting our health, where is it coming from? Most of us immediately think about highways or airports, rail lines, construction sites. And yes, those are still significant sources of environmental noise. But there is another source that has quietly begun appearing in communities around the world. Buildings, not office towers, not apartment buildings, not factories in the traditional sense. Some of the largest industrial buildings ever constructed. Buildings with almost no windows, and buildings that operate 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, without ever shutting down. Buildings most of us will never enter and probably never even notice, and that's data centers. If artificial intelligence is the brain, these are its beating heart. Every email you send, every movie you stream, every cloud backup, every online purchase, every search, and every AI conversation, all of it is processed inside one of these facilities. The digital world doesn't exist in a cloud. It exists inside these buildings, very real buildings, and those buildings have very real environmental footprints. Most people imagine a room filled with computers. The reality is far more staggering. Modern hyperscale data centers can span hundreds of thousands, even millions of square feet. Inside are tens of thousands of servers operating continuously. Every one of those servers generates heat, an incredible amount of heat, and heat has to be removed, which means massive cooling systems. Industrial fans, cooling towers, pumps, mechanical equipment, electrical transformers, backup generators. A complex network of infrastructure designed to keep those computers operating every second of every day. And the irony isn't lost on me. We've spent this entire podcast talking about creating environments that help people sleep better, reduce stress, think more clearly, and recover more effectively. Yet, we're now building a new generation of industrial infrastructure that may introduce many of the very environmental stressors we've been trying to eliminate. Not intentionally, but unintentionally. Because somewhere along the way, we became so focused on what this technology could do that we forgot to ask a simple question. How will it affect the people living nearby? And that's the question Well Built keeps coming back to. Not can we build it, but can we build it responsibly? Those are two very different questions. History is filled with examples of innovations that improve society while creating consequences we didn't fully understand until decades later. Leaded gasoline, asbestos, certain pesticides, and none of those technologies were adopted because people wanted to cause harm. Quite the opposite. They were adopted because they solved an immediate problem. The unintended consequences came much later. I'm not suggesting data centers belong in that category, and it's far too early to make that claim. But I am suggesting they deserve the same scientific curiosity, the same rigorous questioning, and the same commitment to understanding how the environments we create influence the biology of the people who inhabit them. Because there's one lesson I've learned from the environmental health over the last century, and I think we all need to take a look at that too, is the absence of visible pollution doesn't mean the absence of biological stress. And just because we can build something, does that exempt us from understanding its consequences? But history has repeatedly shown us that engineering capability and biological wisdom don't always evolve at the same pace. We knew how to manufacture asbestos long before we understood what it did to our lungs. And we knew how leaded gasoline for decades before we understood what it was doing to our children's brains. We knew how to manufacture plastics before we knew where they would end up. The pattern is remarkably consistent. Technology moves first and biology catches up later. The question isn't whether artificial intelligence is valuable. I believe it is for a variety of reasons. The question is whether we're repeating the same mistake we've made throughout history. Building first, asking questions later. What concerns me isn't artificial intelligence. It's artificial urgency. The pressure to build faster, deploy faster, consume more power, build larger facilities, before we've stopped to ask, who bears the environmental cost? The people using AI often live hundreds or thousands of kilometers away. The people living beside these facilities don't. They experience the noise 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. They experience the industrial infrastructure. They experience whatever environmental changes accompany these developments. Shouldn't their health matter just as much as our technological progress? This isn't why Well Built exists. It's proof of why Well Built exists. For decades, the building industry has measured success by asking questions like, does it meet building code? Is it profitable? Is it efficient? Is it aesthetically pleasing? And those are still important questions, but they're incomplete. And Well Built asks another. What does this environment ask of the human body every single day? Because buildings aren't passive. They're biological environments, whether it's a bedroom, a school, an office, or a billion-dollar data center. Every environment either reduces physiological stress or it adds to it. There isn't a neutral option. The greatest environmental failures in history were not caused by evil intentions. They were caused by good intentions that were never questioned. If a data center can measurably affect the quality of life of the people living around it, then that impact shouldn't be treated as an unfortunate side effect of innovation. It should be treated as a design problem that needs to be solved. When I created WellBuilt, I wasn't trying to build another design methodology. I wasn't trying to create another certification, and I certainly was not trying to tell people how to build. I was asking a question. And what if we've been measuring the wrong things all this time? It's no longer about how a building performs, but does it support the people inside it or those who live near it? Because ultimately, that's the purpose of every environment, is not simply to function, but to support life. And technology will continue to evolve. Artificial intelligence is not going away, and data centers will continue to be built, and cities will continue to grow. And none of that is inherently good or bad. The question is whether we have the courage to evolve our thinking at the same pace. Will we continue asking, can we build it? Or will we finally begin asking, how should we build it? Because those are very different conversations. One measures engineering, the other measures wisdom. And perhaps wisdom is the resource we're in the shortest supply of. If WellBuilt has taught me anything, is that every environment leaves a fingerprint on human biology. Some fingerprints help us recover, some help us think more clearly, and some help us sleep more deeply. But some quietly increase stress without us ever realizing why. And the challenge of our generation isn't deciding whether technology belongs in our future. It already does, and there's no going back. The challenge is ensuring that humanity remains at the center of that future, because progress that comes at the expense of human health isn't progress at all. It's simply a different kind of cost. Thank you again for joining me for another episode of Renovation Secrets. If today's conversation challenged the way you think about the built environment, I'd encourage you to share this episode with somebody who believes great design is more about just appearances. Because the future isn't something we inherit, it's something we design. And every design decision is ultimately a decision about people. A true measure of progress isn't what we're capable of building, it's whether what we build allows humanity to flourish. Thanks again.